In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Alright, let's get started. Um, Hello, my name is Mr. Reyna, and I am the Bible translator. And today I'm going to go over the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 25. An update. Um, the first and second chapter have been completed in the book of Matthew. I'm 99% sure I won't change anything. I've uploaded it to the Facebook group page, and we're going to go from there. But in the meantime, before I even go any further, I'm just going to go over some things in those first two chapters. And in the first chapter, um, I said in the previous video that there's no mistranslations in the Bible. That's not entirely true. This is probably one of the exceptions in the rule. Some Bibles, and I'll explain to you why they put it like this. But some Bibles, in this, first just the context. Let me go in order before I get out of order. We're going to go ahead and read that verse, the 25th verse of the first chapter of Matthew. Here we go. We'll go to the English Standard Version. Now, the English Standard Version is missing kind of the ending, but that's not what this video is about. I'll just read that one as a point of reference. But knew her, English Standard Version, but knew her not until she had given birth to a son. So that's a proper rendering, other than where they drop the firstborn, but we're not talking about that. But knew her not. So that's a proper rendering. And then here's probably the one a lot of people are used to listening to, the King James Bible. Here it says, and knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son. Okay. So that again, the knew her not. So that's what we're talking about. That word knew. That's today's topic. Just that one little word, knew. So let me tell you. I'll read the new International Version, so you can see how it's not translated correctly. And this is like one of those one. And I'll also explain why they came with that answer. It's pretty simple, but I'll explain why they came up with that answer. And not only the NIV, a lot of them. And this would be the one exception of the rule where there's definitely a mistranslation. And not every single modern Bible has this. Just I'll name them right here. So New NIV, New International Version, it says, but he did not consummate their marriage. This is wrong. Okay, the New Living Translation. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, so I'll read where it's wrong. The word new. New Living Translation. Did not have sex relations with her. Wrong. Berean Study Bible. He had no union with her. Okay, that's wrong. New American Standard. But he kept her a virgin until. It's wrong. And even in the New American Standard Bible has an updated version called the Legacy Standard Bible. Kept it the same, which is wrong. And again, it's very. I'll explain why it's simple. I'm not trying to blow a trumpet, but it's very simple. Why it's wrong, and I'll tell you how they came to that conclusion. You can't really blame them, but when you hear what I have to say, you instantly go, "Okay, that's wrong. No way it can be that." Okay, Christian Standard Bible did not have sex relations with her. Okay, that's wrong. Holman Standard Bible, which is the older version of the Christian Standard Bible, it says did not know her intimately. It's wrong. American Standard is actually right. But here we go. This is even a lot of there's one Aramaic. There's a few Aramaic versions out there, but this one's wrong right here. He did not know her sex until, again, that's wrong. Let's see here. Contemporary English version, they did not sleep together. It's wrong. And then you have the Good News translation, which is a Catholic translation, by the way. He had no sex relations with her. Again, wrong. And there's even the most modern Catholic version. I don't know the name because it just wasn't on my list, but a lot of them say something similar to what I'm reading to you. And again, those are wrong. Okay, God's Word, I never heard of that one. God's Word, I never heard of it. But did not have marital relations with her. Okay, that's wrong. New International Standard says the same thing. The Net Bible says the same thing. The New Heart Bible, I never heard of that one, says wrong. Says no marital relations, which is wrong. World English Bible, again, never heard of that one. But did not didn't know her sex until, again, that's wrong. And here's the Weymouth New Testament. Now, this one gets it kind of right. This one understands that, and this Weymouth New Testament was made before the English Revised Standard Version. English Revised Standard Version is, I forget when. I think it was Queen Victoria or something, and late 1800s, and they wanted a new Bible, so they got the King James, and they tried to redo what they did in 1611. It kind of failed. It just, we'll just say it failed for argument's sake. It failed, but they had all these scholars, and the Queen signed the thing, and they were trying to make like King James Bible too, and it just didn't work out for them. But before that, you had something called the Weymouth New Testament, and I think there's another one. I don't have it on my list, but I know I've read it before. I think it's called the Mace New Testament. And there was a few other ones at that time, like in between the King James and in between the English Standard Version. There was a few New Testaments. A few people they tried making their own Bibles and stuff like that. But here he gets it kind of right. He says because he kind of understood it. It means more. The word means more. The way it's written in Aramaic and Greek and Latin, it means more than just simply he did not know her, or he knew her not. It means a little bit more than that. But they also understood that the pendulum didn't swing all the way into, he didn't take her to bed, he didn't keep her. They understood it wasn't some extreme like that. But here, let me read it right here, Weymouth New Testament, and you can look up the Mace New Testament for yourself if you're so interested. It says, but he did not live with her until she had given birth to a son. So again, he understands that it's a little bit more than new, but not so far as what these other guys, especially modern versions, are saying. And I think the Mace New Testament says something along, again, I could be wrong, pointing the top of my head, something like, and he did not habitate with her until, or dwell with her, something like that. All right, so let me begin why they came up with these ideas. Okay, and let's see right here. If you can see right here. All right, here we go. This is. Can I switch it? Let's see if I can switch it. No, it's just a stupid picture. Anyways, I'll show you right here. Let's see if you can see that. So that, my friends, is the way Matthew would have wrote the sweater. Not the bottom one. That's Arabic. The one on the top. That's Aramaic in what's called the Jerusalem font. So this is a side bonus. So I'm kind of this is not like part of the actual lesson. This is a side bonus. I won't do this after this video, but just in case you're interested in Aramaic. Let's see if I can get it right there. That's perfect. That's on top. That's called the Jerusalem version of Aramaic. Okay. But there's really no ancient one that's found like that. But St. Matthew would have written it like that in Aramaic. In Aramaic, depending on where you live, what city, what region, etc., you're going to write it differently. But the beauty is that it all makes the same sounds. Like the letters make the same sounds, but you write the sounds differently. So just imagine, if you're within, in the what we call the West, in certain Western countries like Italy, Portugal, France, England, Spain, all use the same alphabet, but you sound out the letters differently. Well, imagine if you kind of use the same alphabet, but in France they wrote the A so differently that you kind of, if you didn't know it offhand, you kind of wouldn't be able to recognize it. But it made the same sound. So that's the beauty of Aramaic. It all makes the same sounds, but it's just kind of written differently. But it means the same exact. It makes the same exact sounds. So obviously in the West, we have the same alphabet in all these countries, but they all make different sounds. That's interesting. So let me just show you. So this right here at the bottom, not the Hebrew at the top, but the Aramaic at the bottom, that's the oldest version that it's found in. Okay, and the oldest manuscripts. But you can see the difference, how this one's written like that. Okay, yeah, and but the way you say it, same exact way as you say this one. This is just the Jerusalem font. Okay, And this is one of the most ancient fonts that they have. So if you look up the original Aramaic, it's all written in this style of penmanship. Like again, like I said, the individual letters make up the same noise. So there's a root word, or this word we're about to go over in Hebrew, and that's going to be the key to understand why it's not this SEX stuff or kept her version, or didn't lay with her, whatever they want to use. This is going to be the key. This root word right here in Hebrew. And remember, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic, they read from right to left. No, excuse me. Yes, right to left. They read right, the opposite of English. All right, and this is kind of just a bonus, a little educational. This is the same exact, see the Hebrew? Never mind the bottom text, the third bottom text. Just look at that Hebrew, the Aramaic on top of the Hebrew. Again, that's just an example of how different their writing styles can be, but they make the same exact noises, sounds, okay? Just again, just a little bonus. That's the same root word as the Hebrew that you see. And again, this is the Jerusalem font. So again, all of those is the same exact font, except for the very bottom one, the ending, okay? The ending is different. That's not in the root word. That's what, and I'll get into that. But the root word is all exactly the same, and I'll see how the Hebrew proves that it cannot never ever be this sexual stuff that they're talking about. It cannot be that. Okay, the Jerusalem font at the top, this little really, really blocky font, almost looks like Hebrew. You can see where, wherever this is in Syria, wherever that was in Syria, the kind of the second one to the top, you can see that it really took a lot from the Hebrew and the blockiness. Okay, so now let's go back to this word. So this word here, okay, now we're going back to the actual lesson. This word here you can't look it up in any dictionary, okay? It's not found in any modern dictionary, any we'll say secular dictionary. It is in Bible dictionaries. Like if you're studying Aramaic and you say, oh, that word's in this Bible dictionary, yeah, you can find it there, but you can't find it in the normal dictionary. So if you wanted to look that word up, you have to go off the root word, okay? That's the root right there. You have to go off those root words right there in Aramaic, okay? And you do, and this is why those versions came up with that with this whole idea that about didn't take you to bed, because if you look up the root word in Aramaic, okay, one of the definitions will be, yeah, he didn't, do the deed. It's doing the deed, it's having, those types of relations, but it's in the vulgar way. That's why it can't be that word, because it doesn't make sense that Matthew would use a vulgar language. Okay, if you were to say it like that, it would be a vulgar way. And let me show you again. So I have let me see if I can adjust it. That's why I have the Aramaic, or the Arabic, because you can see the Arabic. You see we're not going to go over the sounds. We're just going to call it like what we think it is in English. So see the little A was at the bottom, second one, that's the Arabic version of it, of the same exact word. But that one doesn't mean intimate relations. And I want you to notice the ending. Okay, the root word, they have the same root word, but look at the ending. It's like a little A, the one with the umlauts on it. Okay, and that word in Arabic doesn't mean nothing about those types of relations, those physical relations. It doesn't mean that. It means wisdom. It means knowledge. It means to learn of. That's what it means, okay? And I want you to look at the ending, because like I said, this word you can only find in like a Bible dictionary. It's like, yeah, you can't find it in a normal dictionary. Okay, but this one you can. And here's another Hebrew word. All these words mean the same exact thing. So these Hebrew and this Arab word, that's going to give you a really good idea of what that word means up there in Aramaic. With that ending, the ending right there. See the little A's? As I said, that's the root, but then it's written like that with that ending. It can change everything. Okay? And the whole thing about physical relations, well, it's written like that without that root. That's a slang way of saying, okay, yeah, I got with her, or I went to bed with her. That's a slang way of saying it. But when you add that root, you're now looking at something like that. Okay? So that in this word in Hebrew can never ever, or in Arabic can never ever mean the slang term, or even just to kind of be kind of like, very prude about saying, oh, well, I knew her. You know what I'm saying? I knew her. That can never mean that. And here it is the same, just to show you in Hebrew, for all you who know Hebrew, look that word up. It will never ever mean nothing about no relations, physical relation, never. Again, here you have the root. So that root can also mean just wisdom, didn't know of, didn't learn of, okay? So that's, and again, we'll see where the Greek and the Latin kind of take over from here and kind of really give good explanation of what it actually means. And here, okay, and here's another key. So in the Aramaic, like I said, slang, let's see if I can zoom in. The way it's written like that, just like that, it can mean slang in a slang, vulgar way. It can mean like, yeah, I got with her. We had those relations, like Bill Clinton, physical relations, it can kind of mean that if it's like that. But here's the problem. Here's the same exact letters, but in Hebrew, okay? The same root in Hebrew, and that's an actual word. And again, it means wisdom. It means to learn of. It can never ever mean this slang word. So so knowing that in Hebrew, obviously St. Matthew is coming from here, this word in Hebrew, and he's not coming from the slang word or the vulgar word in Aramaic. And also, just the way it's written in Aramaic doesn't imply that. Okay? All right, so we got Aramaic out of the way. And I won't get in the next videos. I'll just kind of tell you what it is. Just the first one. I just kind of wanted to show you. So we'll get into the Greek real quick. The Greek, here's the Greek. There's the Greek. On the bottom is the Latin. That's the way it's found in the Greek and Latin Bibles. Here's a little bit of problem in the Greek though. The way it's written like that in the Greek, okay? You can't find it like that anymore. Okay, you can get the meaning from the root word, and I'll show you the root word. Okay, there's the root word. Now I made those spaces just so you can see a little bit of the spaces aren't there in the actual originals. I just made those words so you can break them up if you wanted to break them up. Okay, so at the bottom, the third of the bottom, that's the Greek word that you're gonna be able to see in just a regular old dictionary. And there's the Latin version of it. And there's the way it's written in the Greek. Okay, here's the problem with the Koine Greek, the way that it's written like that. You can't type that into a Greek dictionary and find it like that because it's just such an archaic way of spelling it, and there's just nothing to reference upon it. Like I said, outside, obviously in a Bible dictionary for Greek, yeah, you will be able to find it, obviously. But in a regular old dictionary, you're not going to be able to find it. You're only going to be able to find the root word, okay? It's spelled a little different. The spelling doesn't matter, the beginning. But you see the end is a little different. And also it has that beginning is a little different too. But Hebrew and Latin are very related. And here you have the same exact word in Latin. The only difference will be the beginning, right? This what we would call co. Okay, we call that a co. Again, I'm not going to use the words because I don't want that channel just to be about how do you pronounce this and that. It's not important. The important is the meaning. So that co, see up there again, it's not an e. We'll just call it an e in Greek. So everything, if it looks like something, that's what we're just going to call it, just for the sake of simplicity. So you see the EV at the end, and then you see the E in the beginning. Well, look at the Latin right below it. Okay, you see almost the same thing, but that root's the same exact way. And that Greek word right there, that's the one you can actually look up. Well, that's a Latin word in the simplest form. Okay, and then we get the word recognize. Obviously, the RE. I just put that there because we don't use the RNEs, but you have the word cognize. Well, cognize, that's an English word, cognize. So again, when you say cognize, you're saying the same exact root word as the Latin or as the Greek. You're just saying it differently because, over time,
over different lands and accents, you're going to be saying it differently, but it's literally the same word when you say cognize. And you don't might not use cognize that much, but you definitely do use the word recognize. You use recognize all the time. I didn't recognize him. Yeah, I recognize that. So you're saying the word all the time. Okay, and here's another way it can be written in Latin. It's connected to like I said, the simplest form of Latin. It's connected. And from this word, you get the word quaint. Quaint. And then from quaint, we get from old French, we get acquainted. And that's right there. Acquainted among. So you see how I broke that down. So the word quaint in English, okay, it's going to be the closest word that we, unless you want to say cognitive. And he did not, it was, if you follow the Latin precisely in English, you kind of do it, but it would sound weird. Like he didn't cognize her until it wouldn't make any sense. If you put it like that, he cognized with her, it wouldn't make any sense. But it would kind of make sense if you say he didn't recognize her, but obviously he did. But you can start seeing how the language starts to make a little bit more sense, but it's still not the right word. So you get the word quaint, okay, and then you get the word acquainted, and he did not acquaint with her, or he did not acquaint among her, and that's really what he did. And that's kind of like I said, remember the mace and the Weymouth New Testament, they kind of understood this concept. I mean, they just didn't come up with the right word, the one that's closest to Greek and Latin, which is, and he acquainted among her not. The among you get from the word co. Remember that word? What we would call co in Latin, and that e in the Greek. Again, that's not an actual e, but we'll just call it that. That word means like among, with, like God with us. Okay, God with us. One other way is saying God among us. So he acquainted among her not. And that's what. And what do you mean he didn't acquaint with her? Well, okay, you gotta look at the whole story. He married her, right? He what was he gonna do? He was gonna disown her secretly, or in a private manner, because he knew if he would do it by the law, he would have to accuse her to the synagogue, and he would have to, and this is in Aramaic, he would have to strip her bare. He have to show that she was pregnant and say, "Hey, I want my money back," because that's the way the ancient Jewish, even in the, if you really want to understand a lot about the marriages and some of the stories in the Bible, understand some of the really Orthodox Jewish customs of marriage. Especially the wedding. There's a lot of stuff in the weddings in the New Testament. So if you understand how the really super Orthodox Jews, Hebrews, we're going to call them, they have their weddings, then you can might understand a little bit more about the New Testament. At least, be able to see more detail in it. So, he was going to disown her. Angel comes in, gives him the dream. Okay, tells him about the baby and all that stuff. Okay, and then at the end, what does he do? He accepts her as his wife, because they were just betrothed. They were betrothed like they were engaged. Imagine if you got engaged with your wife and you had to go to her parents and you had to pay silver, right, money, and your parents guarantee that she's a virgin, and you're like, okay, and then the story is that, and then this fiance, which you haven't really met, this is the way it worked back then. Even some of the hardcore, real strict Muslims, they never see the wife until it's time to consummate the marriage. So they have the whole thing on with just little tiny, little, like this, and they don't ever see us. Even in the West, we kind of have that with the veil, but you can see through the veil, and obviously you see your wife before you get married. But that's where that kind of comes from, where you're not allowed to see the wife. That's where they have the veil, and then they lift it up at the church or whatever. But that kind of comes from those Eastern customs. And like I said, so he didn't even see her. So he basically, like arranged the marriage. Someone somehow arranged the marriage, however it went down, and he paid the money. So if you know about the ancient Jewish cultures, he had to pay it's like 500 shekels of silver or something like that. So he had to pay that silver. And again, I won't get too much into the story. But it kind of makes sense too, because that's like I said, it's like one of the exceptions to the rules is in some of these newer Bibles is definitely a mistranslation. Um, so it's important to really know this one word to put everything into context and to put everything in clarity. Let's see, I lost my train of thought. But let me think here. Where was I? So what does he mean by he knew her not? Okay, till, what is that word? Or until. So what does the until mean? Well, Luke chapter 2 verse 5, until, right, he had to take Mary down to Bethlehem to pay his taxes, and then there at Bethlehem is where she gave birth to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So that's what it means, till. So until then, and there's actually a pattern in the second chapter of Matthew, which I'll get into. There's a pattern of Saint Joseph being told to do something by the angel, which he does, right? Like in this, here's a parallel. Saint Joseph is told by the angel, "Take her as your wife," and he did. And in the other one, in the chapter 2, the angel tells Saint Joseph, "Hey, the people who wanted Jesus dead, they themselves have died. So go back to Israel." And he did, right? He followed the angel. But what happened? He found out that Herod's son was ruling, and he feared to go any further. He feared to go thither, as the King James says. He feared to go any further. So then he has to be warned in a dream. He has to be admonished. That's what it says, admonish. Admonish is like a polite way to rebuke somebody or to correct somebody. So he has to be corrected in a dream. So remember, he followed the angel, but then kind of hesitates on the way there because he finds out about this information. Then he has to be corrected, and then he kind of goes through with it, right? And then he eventually gets back to Galilee and Nazareth. Okay, after he's being corrected, it's almost the same thing in the first chapter, where he listens to the angel, accepts Mary as his wife, but then Matthew makes it a point to say, but he did not acquaint among her, meaning he didn't really want to get to know her. He didn't want to get to know her. Not that he didn't he was kind of forced to get to know her when he had to pay the taxes, when he had to just ride with her for a couple of days, and she was on the back of the cart being pulled by the donkey. Okay, at that point he was forced, and then of course when the baby comes in Bethlehem and they're stuck in a little manger because there's no room at the inn, and he's forced to get to know her, literally, like like the Hebrew word is knowledge, wisdom, to learn of her knowledge, to learn of her wisdom, to learn about her, like what she likes to eat, what she likes, to become friendly. You become friendly with someone, you're gonna know what they like to eat, what they don't like to eat, what spices they like, what desserts they like, what sayings they like, what's their favorite book, all this stuff. But imagine if you didn't want to know that, you just kind of in a corner in the room, or you always going to work, or you're always finding something to do. That's what he's kind of saying. Till she gave birth to Jesus. So that's what that till means, is when they had to go to Bethlehem. It doesn't mean nothing about, like I said, in the Aramaic it can mean this whole thing about getting with someone physically, but it's written in a vulgar way, so it doesn't make sense, that vulgar slang way. So it doesn't make sense St. Matthew would write it like that. All of a sudden he just puts vulgar way of saying that. It wouldn't make sense. And then again, in the Greek and the Hebrew, kind of give you more insight into the word, where he's talking about he acquainted among her not. He didn't literally get to know her. And of course in the Hebrew, that those root words, which mean something in Aramaic, can never ever mean that in Hebrew. It can only mean wisdom, only mean knowledge. So again, that's where St. Matthew was coming from, that Hebrew root word. He wasn't coming from the slang Aramaic root word. He wasn't coming from that. And again, it's written in a different way. The context tells you that's what it is. And again, church history just tells you, okay, Saint Joseph was her guardian. He was married to her to protect her, right? Because if you had a woman back in those ancient times with no wife, with no husband, with a kid and pregnant, you know, people could accuse her. They could have thrown stones at her. They would have called her names, chased her out into the wilderness. People were pretty brutal back then, you know. They would have no mercy on people. Obviously, Joseph did, right? And that's why um, he was kind-hearted. That's what the it says, and we'll get that to the we'll he was kind-hearted. I'll read my translation too in another video before we really move on, or at least for the first chapter that I have done. And that's it. And so you see, that's one of the exceptions to my rule. This is definitely the biggest thing in the mistranslation, or whatever you want to call it, an error, and the Christian scribe that have been committed by these companies.